You stop wasting energy blaming yourself for something that isn't your fault, and you start channeling that energy into fixing the underlying issue no one has been addressing. Here's the simplest way to understand it. Think of insulin as a key. That metaphor is surprisingly accurate. Conventional medicine focuses almost exclusively on the key. More insulin, stronger medications to force your pancreas to make more insulin or to make the insulin you have work harder. Higher doses, more drugs, everything is about the key. But here's what they completely miss. A key, even a perfect one, is useless if the lock is rusted, shut, broken, or missing crucial components. Your cells have tiny molecular doorways on their surface called insulin receptors. These are the locks. They must recognize insulin signal and respond correctly. They're supposed to open, letting glucose move from your bloodstream into your cells where it can be used for energy. But these receptors, the locks, require very specific minerals to work. Without the right levels of these minerals, insulin can bind all at once and nothing happens. The signal hits the door. Insulin knocks as hard as it can. Nothing opens. The door stays locked. Sugar stays trapped in your bloodstream, not because you ate too much, not because you lack discipline, willpower, or character, but because the biological signal that's supposed to open the door never reaches the machinery that controls it. This isn't some fringe theory I invented. It's not alternative medicine or wishful thinking. It's documented, peer-reviewed, published science from some of the most prestigious research institutions in the world. Large population studies from Harvard School of Public Health and the National Institutes of Health have tracked tens of thousands of adults for 20, 30, even 40 years. And they discovered something remarkable, something that should be front-page news but isn't. People with type 2 diabetes are far more likely to have significant deficiencies in the exact minerals that control insulin receptor signaling and glucose metabolism. And here's the part that should completely change the way we think about treating this condition. People in these studies who maintained adequate mineral levels throughout their lives had far better glucose control, slower HbA1c progression, fewer complications, and markedly improved overall outcomes even when their diets were nearly identical to those with low mineral levels. Same food, same calories, same carb intake, yet completely different cellular responses. The critical difference wasn't what they ate. It was whether their cells had the essential raw materials needed to respond properly when insulin delivered its signal. In just a moment, I'm going to break down the 3 specific minerals that have the most direct impact on how insulin signaling works in your body. The first mineral ensures insulin physically reaches the cell receptor. The second helps insulin activate the machinery inside the cell once the receptor is triggered. And the third protects the insulin-producing cells in your pancreas before insulin even enters your bloodstream. Right now, I'll tell you this. The number 1 mineral on this list is the single most critical one. The vast majority of people with long-term blood sugar problems are severely deficient in it. And it's also the one that people notice the fastest, most dramatic improvements from once they correct the deficiency. So stay with me through this entire explanation. This gets extremely practical, extremely fast, and I promise you'll be able to start applying it today. Quick, honest question before we dive deeper. Have you ever been in a situation where your doctor looks at your test results, says everything looks fine on paper, your kidney function seems okay, your heart appears relatively stable, no major red flags, but your blood sugar still refuses to budge no matter what you do? If that scenario hits home, you are not alone. Thousands of people are in the exact same position right now. They follow conventional medical guidance perfectly, and yet their numbers keep rising instead of improving. It's not that the standard tests are wrong or useless, it's that they aren't measuring the right things. They track symptoms and manage crisis, but they fail to identify the underlying cause. Drop a comment if this resonates. It helps others watching realize they're not alone in facing this invisible problem that no one seems to take seriously. Now let's get precise about these 3 minerals. I'll start with number 3 and move up to the most important one. This order is intentional. Each mineral supports and builds on the function of the one before it, working together as a system. Number 3 is zinc. Most people immediately associate zinc with immune support, fighting colds, healing wounds. That's a huge oversimplification. Zinc plays a fundamental biochemical role in producing, packaging, storing, and releasing insulin inside the beta cells of your pancreas. Without adequate zinc, your pancreas simply cannot manufacture fully functional insulin the way it's designed to. Over months and years, your total insulin output gradually weakens. Oxidative damage, which is essentially cellular rust, builds up dramatically inside the very cells responsible for producing insulin. Long-term complications, particularly nerve damage, neuropathy, and immune dysfunction, accelerate in people with chronic zinc deficiency. Clinical research consistently shows that zinc deficiency is extremely common in anyone living with elevated blood sugar for years, but almost nobody ever tests for it. It's not part of standard diabetes care. It's routinely ignored. Here's how zinc works in practice when used correctly. Zinc glycinate, one well-absorbed form, tends to be gentle on the stomach and effective for most people. The huge mistake people make is taking massive doses sporadically once a week when remembered, or doing a few days of high doses and then stopping for weeks. That doesn't work. Your body needs steady, moderate, consistent support over time. Consistency beats intensity every single time when correcting nutrient deficiencies. Getting zinc right also lays the foundation for the next mineral, which amplifies the benefits significantly. Number 2 is chromium. Chromium does not replace natural insulin, nor does it make your pancreas produce more. What it does do, this is critical, is amplify the signal insulin sends once it binds to a receptor on your cell. Think of it like turning up the volume on a speaker. The message stays the same, but now the cell actually hears it instead of straining to catch a faint whisper. When chromium levels are low, as they are in a large percentage of people with blood sugar issues, you experience intense cravings, especially for sweets and refined carbs. Your body is desperate to get glucose into cells. When signaling fails, your brain interprets it as starvation, screaming at you to eat more sugar. Post-meal spikes grow bigger and last longer. Your overall glucose tolerance, the ability to handle a normal carb load without a huge blood sugar surge, gradually deteriorates. Most people never connect these symptoms to a simple missing nutrient because nobody ever mentions it. Published studies using chromium picolinate, a well-absorbed form, consistently show measurable improvements in insulin receptor activity and a gradual reduction in HbA1c over several months. Notice I said gradual. This is not an overnight miracle. The common mistake is expecting a massive fasting blood sugar drop in the first week. When it doesn't happen, people give up, claiming chromium doesn't work. Chromium works by slowly restoring and rebuilding insulin receptor sensitivity at the cellular level. This repair process takes time. Consistency over months matters far more than the exact dose. You're not forcing a dramatic reaction. You're patiently rebuilding normal cellular function. Now, the heavy hitter, the mineral insulin, depends on most. This is where subtle biochemical improvements turn into noticeable day-to-day changes, where you can finally point to something and say, yes, my body actually feels different and better. Number 1, the big one is magnesium. Magnesium is biochemically required for literally every step of the insulin signaling cascade. It's essential the moment insulin binds to its receptor on the cell surface, and it continues to play a role through every stage of glucose uptake and cellular energy production. Magnesium is critical when that receptor activates the complex internal signaling pathways inside the cell. It's essential for the actual transport of glucose across the cell membrane from the bloodstream into the cell where it can be used for energy. Without enough magnesium, insulin resistance steadily worsens. No matter what else you do, your fasting glucose creeps higher year after year. Your HbA1c stalls and plateaus, no matter how perfectly you eat or how faithfully you take your medications. But magnesium's importance goes far beyond blood sugar. It impacts circulation throughout your entire body. It influences heart rhythm and blood pressure regulation. It supports nerve function, which is why low magnesium triggers numbness, tingling, and neuropathy. It affects kidney health and filtration. It affects sleep quality. It affects muscle cramps, restless legs, and tension headaches. Without sufficient magnesium, insulin is essentially shouting into a void, a message nobody can hear or respond to. Here's what people consistently notice first when they start correcting magnesium deficiency. And it's fascinating because it's not what you'd expect. The earliest improvements aren't in blood sugar, they're in sleep. People fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and wake feeling genuinely rested. Restless legs at night decrease or disappear entirely. There's a noticeable calmness in the nervous system, less free-floating anxiety, reduced physical tension, and fewer random muscle cramps in the calves and feet. These aren't random separate benefits. They're all real-time metabolic and neurological improvements, signaling that your cells are finally getting the magnesium they desperately need to function correctly. Magnesium glycinate is the form most often recommended because it's highly absorbable and gentler on the digestive system than cheaper forms like magnesium oxide, which mostly just cause loose stools without truly raising cellular magnesium levels. Now, if you're thinking, I've tried supplements before and felt absolutely nothing, that's a completely fair objection. Let me address it directly. This isn't about massive megadoses or forcing your body to respond overnight. It's not about quick fixes or shortcuts. This is about methodically restoring baseline cellular function slowly, safely, and sustainably over time. You're not trying to reverse a decade of deficiency in a single week. You're correcting nutritional gaps that built up gradually over years. This requires patience. Start with moderate doses. Increase gradually if needed, and always coordinate with your healthcare provider, especially if you're on medications. As your cells start responding better to insulin, which they will, your medication needs may change, and doses may need adjusting to avoid dangerous low blood sugar. We're not forcing artificial outcomes. We're restoring your body's natural healthy function. We're giving your body the essential raw materials it needs to do the job it was already designed to do. Here's the core issue that almost nobody addresses and that most doctors never even mention. You can eat a perfectly clean diet. You can take every medication exactly as prescribed. You can exercise religiously, but without the specific minerals insulin biochemically requires to function at the receptor level. The entire system simply cannot respond properly no matter how hard you try. That's why so many diligent, conscientious, hardworking people feel like complete failures despite putting in enormous effort. It's not a lack of discipline. It's not willpower or moral strength. It's a lack of basic cellular support at the most fundamental biochemical level. Here's a practical, actionable challenge you can start today. For the next 30 consecutive days, focus on restoring your cellular function, not on restricting your diet any further. Track 4 simple metrics consistently. Your fasting glucose first thing in the morning, your overall energy level during the day on a 110 scale, your sleep quality each night, your post-meal blood sugar, how high it spikes and how long it takes to normalize. You're not chasing perfection. You're aiming for small, measurable, consistent improvements over time. That's how real lasting progress happens. Small corrections made consistently with regular feedback. Now let's dig deeper into why these 3 minerals are so critical and why conventional medical advice misses this completely. At a typical doctor's appointment for diabetes management, they check your A1c, fasting glucose, maybe your cholesterol, and basic kidney function, but they almost never check your mineral status. Why? Because it isn't part of standard diabetes protocols taught in medical school, and insurance won't cover it. Conventional care focuses entirely on managing glucose levels with medication, not investigating why your cells stop responding to insulin in the first place. It's symptom management, not root cause medicine. Here's what's actually happening inside your cells. Over time, when these critical minerals are depleted, insulin in your bloodstream binds to a receptor on your cell surface. That's step 1. For this binding to trigger the next step, activating the internal cellular machinery, magnesium must be present in adequate amounts. Without sufficient magnesium, the signal halts right at the receptor. The door never opens. Nothing happens. Even if you have plenty of circulating insulin, even if your pancreas is overproducing insulin, your cell simply cannot respond. Now let's add low chromium levels into the equation. The few receptors that are managing to respond at all are operating at maybe half strength or less. The signal is weak, muddled, and inconsistent. The cell hesitates. Glucose remains trapped in the bloodstream with nowhere to go. Layer low zinc on top of that, and the problem compounds. Your pancreas is actively struggling to produce adequate high-quality insulin because it lacks the zinc needed for proper insulin synthesis. The insulin you do produce is far less effective than it should be. Oxidative stress and cellular damage accumulate inside the insulin-producing beta cells themselves. Over months and years, those cells gradually fail and eventually die off completely. Do you see how this becomes a cascading, interconnected problem? It's not a single isolated issue. It's a multi-level system breakdown happening simultaneously. Trying to fix this complex biological problem with medication alone without addressing the underlying mineral deficiencies is like trying to start a car with a dead battery by pressing the gas pedal harder and harder. The fuel is in the tank. The engine might be mechanically sound, but if the battery is dead, if the spark plugs cannot fire, nothing productive will happen no matter how hard you press that pedal. Let's get specific about what depletes these essential minerals in the first place. Understanding the root causes helps prevent the problem from recurring even after it's been corrected. Chronically elevated blood sugar over months and years is a major factor. Repeated glucose spikes force your kidneys to work overtime, filtering excess sugar into your urine. Along with it, minerals, especially magnesium, get flushed out. This creates a vicious self-reinforcing cycle. High blood sugar depletes minerals. Low minerals increase insulin resistance. Insulin resistance drives blood sugar even higher, and the cycle spirals downward. This is why people with long-standing, poorly controlled blood sugar consistently feel worse over time, despite doing everything they've always done. Chronic psychological and emotional stress is another massively underestimated factor. Constant, unrelenting stress burns through magnesium faster than almost anything else. Stress triggers your adrenal glands to release cortisol and adrenaline, which require magnesium to be metabolized and cleared properly. If you live under ongoing stress from work, family, finances, health, anxiety, caregiving, or relationships, you are actively draining magnesium every single day. Most people never connect their stress to worsening blood sugar control. Certain commonly prescribed medications also significantly deplete minerals over time. Diuretics, widely prescribed for high blood pressure, actively flush magnesium and potassium through the kidneys. Proton pump inhibitors like omeprazole interfere with mineral absorption by reducing stomach acid. Even metformin, the most prescribed first-line medication for type 2 diabetes, can reduce vitamin B12, and may impair magnesium status with long-term use. I'm absolutely not telling you to stop taking any of your prescribed medications. What I am saying is that you need to be aware of their significant downstream nutritional effects that must be actively addressed through targeted supplementation. Then there's another major factor almost nobody thinks about: soil depletion. Modern industrial farming over the past 50 to 70 years has dramatically stripped minerals from agricultural soil. Vegetables, grains, and other crops grown today have scientifically documented lower mineral content than the exact same varieties grown 50 or 60 years ago. That means even if you're eating what you believe is a perfectly healthy diet, rich in vegetables, whole grains, and minimally processed foods, you're still getting far less magnesium, zinc, and chromium than previous generations did from the exact same foods. This is not your fault. It's a systemic issue embedded in our modern food system. What does this mean for you in practical terms? For most people living today, food alone is insufficient to correct existing mineral deficiencies, especially if blood sugar has been elevated for years. Targeted strategic supplementation becomes medically necessary, not as a substitute for real food, but as a focused intervention to restore what has been systematically lost. Now let's clarify the critical distinction between prevention and correction. This matters deeply. If your blood sugar is already normal and you want to stay that way, a mineral-rich whole foods diet combined with stress management may be enough. But if you're already facing elevated HbA1c, documented insulin resistance, prediabetes, or type 2 diabetes, you are no longer in prevention. You are in correction mode, and correction requires far more targeted, focused intervention than prevention ever does. Here's how to approach supplement dosing intelligently. Magnesium. Most people see the best results with 300-400 milligrams daily. Ideally, split between morning and evening. If you're sensitive or just starting, begin around 150-200 milligars and increase gradually over several weeks. Chromium. Clinical trials show 2,400 micrograms daily is optimal. Zinc 1530 milligrams daily is generally effective. Do not exceed 40 milligrams long-term without medical supervision, as excess zinc can interfere with copper absorption and create new problems. It's important to understand you're not taking these supplements at high therapeutic doses forever. You're correcting deficiencies that accumulated over years. Once your cellular levels are restored and your cells consistently respond better to insulin, a process that takes months, not weeks, you may be able to reduce doses or rely more heavily on food For maintenance, patience is key. Give it at least 3 to 6 months of consistent use before evaluating results. One more very common question. What if you already take a daily multivitamin? Doesn't that cover these minerals? Almost certainly not. Most standard multivitamins use forms of magnesium, zinc, and chromium that are poorly absorbed by the body, making them largely ineffective at correcting cellular deficiencies. That's smart, getting the professional support your body actually needs. Now let's talk about long-term maintenance. This isn't a temporary patch or a quick fix. Once your minerals are restored and your blood sugar improves, you don't just stop and revert to old habits. You transition into maintenance. Lower supplement doses, heavier reliance on mineral-rich whole foods, ongoing stress management, prioritizing sleep, and regular blood sugar monitoring to catch any backsliding early. This isn't a short-term intervention. It's a sustainable, lifelong lifestyle. Think about where you are today versus where you could be 6 months from now if you actually start implementing this approach right now. You might currently be stuck with stubborn high blood sugar, low energy, poor sleep, constant cravings, frustration, and worry about complications. 6 months from now, if you commit to this method, you could have blood sugar in a healthy range, reduced or even eliminated medications, steady energy throughout the day, restorative sleep, minimal cravings, and real hope about your health future. That transformation isn't just possible, it's entirely achievable. I've seen it happen hundreds of times, but it requires action. Not tomorrow, not next week after things calm down. Today, right now, start with one supplement. Add 30 more minutes of quality sleep. Take a 10-minute walk. Drink more water. Start somewhere, anywhere, with one small action. Small, consistent steps compound into massive results over time. You are not broken. Your body is designed to heal. It wants to heal. You just need to provide the right tools and the right environment. Understanding is power. Action creates change. Consistency drives transformation. Take care of yourself. Start small. Stay consistent. Trust the process. And watch what happens when you finally give your body exactly what it needs to thrive. Stop scrolling for a moment. What I'm about to reveal could completely change how your body handles blood sugar, energy, and overall health. This isn't about willpower, diets, or medication. It's about unlocking what your cells truly need to function. Stop scrolling immediately. What I'm about to expose will completely blow apart everything you thought you knew about why your blood sugar refuses to move, no matter how flawlessly you eat or how obediently you follow your doctor's instructions. This has nothing to do with willpower. It's not about cutting more carbs. And if you've spent years punishing yourself, feeling like a failure every single time you check your glucose numbers, you must hear this. Your cells are shut tight from the inside. Insulin is pounding on the door, desperate to get in, but it's being blocked. The lock is there. The key exists, but something critical is missing, something essential that makes the system actually work. In the next 52 minutes, I'm going to reveal exactly why this happens to millions, which 3 vital minerals your cells are starving for, and how you can start repairing this today with simple changes you'll actually feel in your body within just a few weeks. Before you obsess over your next meal, before anxiety about tomorrow's fasting blood test takes over, before you grab your glucose monitor again, I want you to stop. Just pause for a moment and notice how you truly feel in this exact moment. Be brutally honest with yourself. You're not in a hospital bed, you're not in immediate crisis, but you're not yourself anymore. There's this heaviness, a sluggish weight that isn't just on the scale. Mornings are brutal. It takes forever to feel human after waking. Simple tasks that used to be effortless. Walking upstairs, doing yard work now drain you. Brain fog hits without warning, making focus and memory feel impossible. Your energy collapses in the afternoon. No matter how much sleep you get, maybe you wake repeatedly at night, maybe your legs ache restlessly, maybe random muscle cramps strike for no reason. This entire collection of symptoms isn't random misfortune. It's not just normal aging, despite what everyone tells you when you complain. That feeling, the heaviness, the sluggishness, the sense that something is just off, is actually your body screaming for attention in the only language it knows. It's alerting you to a critical problem happening deep at the cellular level that nobody seems to notice. I'm Dr. Ryan Mitchell, For the past 24 years, I've been in active medical practice, working directly with thousands of people struggling with blood sugar issues, insulin resistance, prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, and all the devastating complications that follow when these conditions go unrest. I've seen what truly works and what absolutely doesn't. I've watched people follow every conventional guideline perfectly only to see their health deteriorate. And I've also watched people make targeted science-based changes rooted in cellular biology and completely transform their health. Here's the hard truth. Most doctors will never tell you in a rushed 15-minute appointment already thinking about their next patient. If your blood sugar refuses to budge despite your best efforts, it's not because you're eating too many carbs. It's not because you're secretly cheating on your diet. That's the narrative you've been fed, the blame you've been assigned by doctors who don't have the time to dig deeper. The real issue, the root cause in so many cases, is far more fundamental and far more fixable than anyone's telling you. Insulin cannot do its job the way it's supposed to. Not because the insulin itself is weak or defective. Not because there isn't enough circulating in your bloodstream, but because something absolutely critical at the cellular level, something your cells need to even recognize and respond to insulin, is completely missing. Think back to a time before this started. There was a period in your life, maybe it feels like ages ago, when you could eat relatively normally. You could enjoy meals with your family without obsessing over every carb. You could have dessert occasionally without your blood sugar spiking dangerously. Your numbers weren't perfect, but they were manageable. You had energy that lasted all day. You slept through the night. Your body functioned the way it was meant to. Now, fast forward to today. You're doing more than ever, yet seeing worse results. You measure every portion meticulously. You've cut out foods you once loved. You follow every instruction your doctor gives. You take every medication exactly as prescribed. You check your blood sugar religiously. And yet, despite all this effort, your fasting glucose stubbornly stays high every single morning. Your numbers spike sharply after meals, even when you eat something that should be safe. Your A1C barely moves, or worse, it creeps higher year after year. That crushing disconnect between your effort and your results is what frustrates people the most in my practice. It makes you feel broken, like you're failing at something that should be simple. The truth, you're doing everything right. The system itself is what's broken. Let me be perfectly clear. This situation you're in right now was not inevitable. It's not your genetic fate. It doesn't mean your body is permanently damaged beyond repair. What's happening inside your cells is mechanical, not moral. It's biology, not a character flaw. And once you truly understand the actual mechanism behind the problem, once you see how all the pieces fit together, everything changes.